Happy New Year! Yes, I know it's January 20th, but this is the human design new year that I'm talking about, which starts tomorrow. If you're listening to this podcast on the day that it drops, January 21st is the first day when the sun transits in to gate 41. And gate 41 is where the human design new year starts. This episode is a deep dive into the incredible energy of gate 41 and why it's such a supportive gate energy to truly look at the year ahead. I will be talking about some things that you can use, some tools that you can use, some principles that you can follow to really start your year feeling aligned. And maybe it's a chance for a reset if it's been a rocky start. I know that's the case for me. And I'll also be talking about the 2025 Planning by Design planner that I have created, which if you are interested, I will be dropping the link for that in the show notes. So thank you so much for being here. I'm your host, Lori Lisai, human design teacher and midlife coach, here to help you use your human design to shed others' expectations and be who you came here to be. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Midlife by Design. Today, I have a short episode for you to talk about the Human Design New Year, which is happening this week on the 21st. And I am so excited about this time of year because it's all about gate 41, which I'll talk about in just a few minutes. But first, I wanted to mention that if the beginning of the year, if, January 1st feels rushed, it feels like you get caught up in the craziness of New Year's Eve or just the rush of the holidays, and that you always kind of feel discombobulated coming into the beginning of the year, I just want to remind you that there are a few different times when the new year is marked in different cultures. And human design has the new year marked as when the sun transits gate 41. In Chinese culture, it's the Lunar New Year, which happens toward the end of January. You can also look at your birthday as the beginning of a new year for you. So there are a number of times when the new year may not be starting for you. And I just don't want you to feel like you've somehow missed the boat if you didn't start this year with a flurry, but instead it felt like you were being raked over the coals. I'm speaking from my personal experience with my broken wrist and just feeling like the beginning of this year has been really bumpy. And so I am looking forward to hitting the restart button this week and meeting this year with much more intention. So I also want to mention that in the US anyway, we have a pretty significant week, an event happening with the inauguration of a new president. And for some of us, that is not necessarily a very happy thing. So I'm just naming that and holding space for a time that may be a little bit emotionally charged. So let's talk a bit about gate 41, which is the gate of new beginnings, of imagination, of creativity. It's the gate of the daydreamer and fantasy. And it's this beautiful gate that gives us the energy to imagine what's possible. So you can see why the Human Design New Year starts with this gate. And it's called the gate of contraction. And when I think about this gate, the image in my mind that comes is of an archer where you're pulling back on the bow with the arrow and you're thinking about where you want that arrow to go. And the contraction piece is that necessary kind of pulling back before you launch forward, launch into the future. So I would invite you to check your chart and see. And remember that if you don't have your chart, you can go to my website, lorilisai.com, LORILISAI.com, and get it for free. and look to see, do you have gate 41? Gate 41 is in the root center, headed toward the emotional solar plexus. So that's where you will find gate 41, and look to see, is it defined in your chart? And if so, the energy will not necessarily feel different to you. And if it's not in your chart, then understand that you're borrowing this energy for roughly 6 days here in January. So I want to just talk a little bit about themes for 2025 and just what's coming up this year, because this year is crazy balls banana pants in terms of what's happening in the astrology. And the main kind of word that I think will be a defining factor for 2025 is the word change. And obviously things change all the time, but we have to prepare ourselves for it. And I think as midlife women, this is such a beautiful invitation to embrace our personal sovereignty, to embrace our creativity, and to embrace our courage. Because as we face these changes, it's going to be more and more important for us to be grounded in those three things: sovereignty, creativity, and courage. Nervous system regulation is going to be incredibly important this year. So, what kinds of practices are you putting into place for yourself to nurture yourself, to bring a sense of calm and peacefulness to your body, to help you understand that you are safe? And this is also a reminder to use your strategy and authority to stay aligned, because when you have so much change happening, it's really important to be in touch with your truth, with who you came here to be. What energy are you showing up with? Because there are going to be so many exterior factors that are pulling your attention elsewhere. Every single one of the outer planets is changing this year, changing signs. And for all of them to change signs during the course of a year, it's special. And you know, if you've been listening to this podcast, that we are in the midst of a paradigm shift. Things are very much changing, and the world in which we have lived for eons is changing into something new and different. And 2027 technically marks the beginning of that change, but we're already in the portal. We're in the transitory period. So helping yourself to stay grounded, having good practices to support your nervous system is imperative. And then all the more imperative to use your strategy and authority this year to help you stay true to who you are despite the changes that are happening. So a couple of steps that I want to share with you to help yourself stay aligned this year. One of them is taking time to reflect. I like to look at a few different placements as opportunities to reflect in your chart. And one of them is your Venus placement. And the reason I look at Venus is because Venus is not only about love and relationships, but it's also about what we consider important, where our values live. And so if you know what Venus placement you have, and what I mean by placement is the gate, as well as the larger sign in which it resides in your astrology chart, which you can also get at my website. So knowing your Venus and what sign it's in can help you to find language around your values, can invite you to ask specific questions. Part of my Planning by Design 2025 planner is your Venus placement and these questions to help you get clear. So if you're interested in that, I will drop the link below. It's a printable planner as well as a masterclass that goes along with it that will walk you through how do you plan for your entire year according to your human design, in support of your human design. How do you do that? And what does it look like? So I've created a planner to do that for you. The other thing that I like to do when I'm thinking about the year ahead is a values exercise. So you take that language of your planetary placement and then you do a values exercise, which asks you to kind of weigh in, like, what are your top 10 to 15 values? And then it asks you to narrow those down to your top 5 and then narrow them even further down to your top 3. And listen, if you've ever done this exercise, it is difficult. It's challenging. It asks you to truly get clear on what's important to you. One of the things that I like to encourage when we do this values exercise is understanding that your values can shift and change throughout your lifetime. So the 3 things that were really important to you last year may not be as important to you this year. There may be other values that you're finding have made their way into your heart. And so understanding that you evolve as a human. And so when you look at the long list of values and you're trying to, reduce them down to just 3, giving yourself grace that those things can change. You're not writing something in stone for your entire life, but you are making it clear what is important to you for this year, which leads me to my next step in staying aligned, and that is setting intentions. And listen, there's a school of thought around human design that it's not great to plan because then you're not giving yourself room to, for example, as a generator, respond. And while I understand the thinking behind that, I also believe that we're still living in this 3D world, and we do have to plan in order to support ourselves in this 3D world. So for as long as that's happening, we have to kind of create a bridge. So how can we take as many pieces of our human design and build structures to support them? And so when you're setting intentions, how do you do that and make sure that they are rooted in your human design and your astrology? How do they tap into your unique energy? In the planner, for example, I have a 5-year plan, a place for you to think about the intentions that you have for not only this year, 2025, but for the next 5 years, because oftentimes we overestimate what we can accomplish in 1 year, but we underestimate what we can accomplish in 5 years. So if we think about what kind of intentions do we have to set for ourselves for the next 5 years, and then backwards plan, which is a classic teacher play, basically thinking about your end, beginning with the end in mind. So if you want to be at point X in 5 years, then what do you need to do this year in order to move closer to that dream? And using the energy of gate 41 to plan or during your planning is such a beautiful energy to be in. I think that this long-term thinking is a great place to start with the gate 41, and then the ability to back it up and then look at, okay, well, what does that mean for the first quarter of this year? And then from there, what does it mean for this month? And then from there, what does it mean for the week? And then from there, what does it mean for the day? So it's keeping that long-term vision in mind and then consistently keeping it at the forefront of your brain, and then letting yourself use your strategy and authority to give you direction on what to take action on. So the third thing would be about planning strategically. And this is about, setting yourself up for enough space for your strategy and authority to help to guide you. So, for example, if you say you want to start a podcast this year, let's say you have a defined route. When your route is turned on and you have energy to work on that project, and potentially it wasn't in your plans for the week, but you decide that this is really exciting you right now and you decide that you want to do it. So the beautiful thing about creating space in your planner and in your days is that then you have the opportunity to respond to things like that. as an example, I'm speaking from a generator point of view where my strategy is to respond. And I do have a defined route. So I understand what it feels like to be on lockdown, so to speak, with your defined route and have the energy not be available to me. And I understand what it feels like to be on fire about something and just blow through a whole project because I have plenty of energy. So the trick is to build in enough space in your days to be able to do that, to be able to support your design because you have the space to respond, to invite in urges, to sample things around you, to field invitations that speak to your specific genius. So, of all things I would suggest when you're thinking about planning your year is to create space. I don't know if any of you are already using a planner. And if so, does that planner allow you to make these intentional plans for yourself as well as combine your astrology and your human design with those intentions? And if it doesn't, obviously check out my planner, and or if you've already invested in one, think about how can you use that tool to support yourself. You know, if it's just a simple tool that has a calendar feature in front of it, then how can you start to bring in some of the principles that I'm talking about? How can you use time blocks to block off spaces of time so you have time to support your nervous system, so you have time for self-care, so you have time for the things that are important to you from your values exercise? A lot of times what happens is people will get a planner and they'll fill it full of tasks and they'll feel super accomplished when they've finished all of those tasks. But then when they pick their heads up and they look around at the life that they've created, they realize, well, shit, like the things that I've created might make me feel good about finishing them, but I don't feel necessarily good about the overall life that I've created. And maybe what you realize is that sure, you have this laundry list of things that you have accomplished, but the things that you're accomplishing are not aligned with your values. They're not aligned anymore with the things that you feel are important to you. And so that's where you get off track. So my masterclass will walk you through this as well if you are interested. So I am so excited. Gate 41 is one of my favorite energies during the whole year, even though I'll be honest, I freaking do not love January. I feel like it's 75 days long. It takes forever to get through it. But we have some really beautiful things happening during this week, despite the challenges. And Gate 41 is one of them. So spend some time this week in this energy of daydreaming and give yourself time to fantasize about the future that you see for yourself. And then think about how can you set the tone for this year? Make it a year of alignment. Make it a year of growth. Make it a year where you commit to following your strategy and authority. And this is ultimately what leads you to sovereignty. This is what allows for your creativity to come out in the ways that you want it to express itself, because it's a true expression of who you are. And doing these things, creating a life based on intentions, based on your knowledge of how your energy works, all of those things take courage. And I know that if you're listening to this podcast, you have that because you are already on this journey of getting to know yourself at such a deeper level. So I invite you to lean into this energy of Gate 41 starting on the 21st and understanding that it's such a beautiful invitation to see all of the possibilities. So I would love to hear about what you hope will come to fruition for you this year. Please hit me up on any of the socials at Lori Lisa. I would love to hear from you. And if you're interested in the planner and the masterclass, I will drop that link in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening to Midlife by Design today. I hope that this episode gave you some things to think about in regards to planning for the year and how to actually leverage your human design to support you. If you are interested in the planner, you'll find the link below in the show notes. And as we close, I'm sending you strength to release what no longer serves you, joy to fill your days, and clarity to fully be who you came here to be.